I'm Drew Breezy, and this is the Comm Center. We're going to use our collective credible experience to bring you the second installment of a multi-part series of a fascinating case out of Clayton County, Georgia. It's the case of Hannah Payne, who was part of a traffic crash that turned into a man's last breath, not as a result of the crash. We're going to kick it old school with my favorite teaching topic as we sit in the interrogation room to see what Hannah says happened and if that matches the 911 calls. The right to remain silent is a right, so it's time for us to be wrong. All that and what it means for your weekend on the Comm Center.
Welcome to the Comm Center with Drew Breezy. I'm John. I'm an active 911 dispatcher. Drew, former lieutenant, dispatcher, police officer, interrogator, and all-around nice guy, a podcasting friend with police benefits. Hannah Payne was traveling along in a highway not so far from Atlanta. She was going to make a turn, and someone came through a red light and hit her vehicle and a semi. Now, bystanders called 911, and police were being dispatched to the scene, but in a big city, sometimes it takes a little bit for a police officer to get there. Well, the driver of the vehicle, this red Dodge Dakota, was not really responsive to commands. They said, "Hey man, why don't you turn off your vehicle? Why don't you have a seat?" They thought he was intoxicated. In fact, a correctional officer who probably sees lots of people coming in intoxicated into the jail thought he was intoxicated. The driver of the red Dodge Dakota then leaves the scene. Now, Hannah Payne has already called 911. To inform authorities of this, but she's incensed at the idea that he might just be committing a hit and run. So even though his vehicle is heavily damaged, disabled from a broken radiator, is bound to overheat just down the road, Hannah Payne gives pursuit. Now, a 911 dispatcher says multiple times, "We do not want you to follow this person." The reason for that is that it creates a more dangerous situation, and we're trying to contain everything in one place and have a police officer just meet everyone who was involved at the place that it happened so they could do an investigation. As I said, this vehicle that's fleeing the scene is bound to break down. We're bound to find it. There's no reason for Hannah Payne to give pursuit. She does. She gets the license plate number, which, again, is helpful, and that's all we need. And as we're waiting on the line, Hannah Payne eventually engages the driver of this vehicle, perhaps performing even a dangerous maneuver to force him to stop. And then she makes the bold choice to take him at gunpoint, which both Drew and I agree is a strange thing to do, given that no felony has occurred in this situation, nobody seriously injured, and this man was bound to be caught by police. Somehow a struggle ensued when Hannah Payne got into the close reactionary range of the man driving the pickup. And in her words, the firearm was discharged due to no fault of her own. But we're going to hear her words on what she has to say about that. And your challenge for this episode, go ahead and leave a comment below. Do you think Hannah Payne was right in taking the law into her own hands in an era of defunding the police and long wait times and excessive abuses of law enforcement? Do you think that she was doing the right thing? But things just turned out wrong for her anyway. So leave a comment below if you have thoughts about what Hannah Payne did and if you would do it the same thing or something different. But Drew, you taught interrogations. You taught a 40-hour class on interrogations.
It was a week-long interviews and interrogations course that I taught for like 10 years. It's the state's curriculum, which was a little booklet about this big, and they're like, here you go. This is what we want these deputies, officers, detectives, supervisors, and everybody else to know about interviews and interrogations at an advanced level on behalf of the state of Florida, essentially, because it was there. So I had to take that tiny little booklet and make it into a week's worth of work. And I think I did a pretty good job of it. I always had pretty high ratings. As never a homicide detective. I aspired to be one. I think that is probably the top of the field, if you ask me, because you're speaking on behalf of the dead. You're trying to put together a case on behalf of somebody who can no longer speak. So I always held high regard and a lot of respect for those people. And a lot of them are great friends of mine. But I got good at doing interviews on my own, either on the street or through my role as an intelligence detective, interviewing informants, interviewing people for crimes, organized crime and stuff like that. I still kind of have a passion for it. I say our show is like edutainment through real response. So we're talking about, true crime through real response. We do have a true crime flair to us, but we're using the actual body cams, and it's not like we're describing what we think happened. It's stuff that we actually know. Like, you have a great handle on the 911 industry. I have a pretty good handle on the law enforcement industry, and can speak authoritatively and expertly on some of the things that we run across. So this is about as true crimey as you get. Very curious to see people's comments in between show number 2 that we're doing today and show number 3, which we'll be doing next week, to compare and contrast if they think that she was railroaded in this thing or if she was just a straight on vigilante. So this is called The Interrogation of Hannah Payne. So what we're looking at here is a typical interview room. It's not necessarily set up the way I like them, but there's a little small talk between whatever detective that is or officer that is as they remove her handcuffs. Now, the handcuffs are significant because you can tell that she's in a very sterile room, which would indicate she's in a police department of some sort. Or an interview room at the very least, because there's video going. And taking handcuffs off of her is also significant because it shows that she is in custody. It means that she's not free to leave. They're taking the handcuffs off of her so she can conduct her interview, so she can actually, this would be an interrogation. There are 2 different categories. One's an interview, which is, just with somebody to gather information, to get truthful information. And then there's an interrogation, which is somebody who is in custody. They're not free to leave. So here we go. They're just kind of making small talk with her. She's not combative in any way, shape, or form. But the court and other people found it significant that she spent a few minutes biting off her fingernails. Literally biting off her fingernails. Now, not the fingernails like you and I have, the tusk-like features that you and I as Homo sapiens have. She has some type of Lee press-on nail or the equivalent from Sally Beauty. And she is sitting there with her hands free now, just biting every single nail off, 10 of them. And she's stuffing them in her hoodie. So why would this be significant? Well, it may not be significant at all. It might be her nerves. Sometimes detectives like to watch what the person's doing before they go in, so they see that she's occupying herself with her nails. This could also be significant, though, because if she's talking about a struggle that took place and all of her nails are perfectly intact, they probably would have questions about that.
She might have DNA under them.
She might. I don't know how soon after the incident this is. I would assume that it's probably right after. But she goes through all 10. So right hand and left hand, which is significant because she is a right-handed shooter. So she's in there sleeping. She's got her head down. She's waiting on the detectives. I don't know how long it took. Like, this is edited. I edited this. We got this from court TV or I'm sorry, Law and Crime TV did the whole trial, which is the reason for the audio quality. It's the reason the audio quality is bad. Like, I've been trying really hard to enhance the audio of this so we can hear what they're saying. Actually, if you saw the transcript, it matches nothing like what they're saying. But so they wake her up, and just understand that when somebody's going through a very stressful time, whether it's before an interrogation or after, sometimes their adrenaline dumps and they're exhausted. And I don't know if that's what we're seeing here. I don't know if she's just indifferent about the whole thing or if she's just bored and waiting. But she's certainly not sitting there trying to get her story together. That's an indicator of that. So she's not real uptight about this interview. Now, understand this about the audio. If you're listening, they're in a very echo-driven room because it's an empty, like, interrogation room, interview room. There's nothing but a table and Hannah and the 2 detectives in there. So there's going to be a lot of echo, 1. And 2, they have very thick Georgia-like, outside of Atlanta, but in the country kind of accents. They tend to talk fast. And when they do, sometimes it's hard to pick up on the sentences But Hannah's, pretty rather, she speaks rather slow, so you can understand what she's saying. Go
Okay,
ahead, John.
we'll also just let you know, listener, as we go through, if there's any parts there that are hard to understand, we'll bring you up to speed. Let's do it, Drew.
So the detective is trying to put her at ease by just and build a rapport. That's probably the best thing you can do. That's the main thing I teach. Like sit and talk with somebody for about 3 minutes, and it'll do a couple things. It'll, one, give you an indicator. It'll set the bar of what their gestures are like. You'll be able to see if they're nervous about something, if they're short-tempered, if they're going to cooperate, if they're not. But it also lets them see a human side of you. So what you're trying to do is just build a little bit of a rapport. It's usually in your best interest to find something that you have in common, and that way you can both speak on it. And it just makes the interview go easier because they can now identify with you. You can always go back to something like that. And also, you can also draw something important out of them. Like, if they talk about their dogs and their eyes light up, like at the end of the conversation, when they're getting ready to confess, you might want to bring their dogs back into the conversation.
Have you ever watched TV or when we talk to you, remember to stuff like that, okay? So if you understand what I'm saying, I just want you to finish the background review, okay? How old are you, man?
So they're going to confirm some basic biographical information from her age and such, and that's for the video purpose. Like, how old are you? Because they don't want any issues that she was a juvenile or anything like that. I'm sure that's just kind of a standard practice kind of question. So they ask her how old she is. She says 22. What the female detective? There's a white female on the left, a black male on the right. They're the two detectives. They have a table in front of them, which I'm not in favor of. The table in front of them is a barrier of communication. So maybe that's a strike against getting, maybe to the heart of the matter. Could be an old school method that I was taught. But you also want her on, you definitely, you can be on a rolling chair as the interrogator or interviewer. You definitely want her on a 4-legged chair. I said this incorrectly on another show that I was on one time, and it still haunts me to this day. What you want, when you're the person you're interviewing, you want to have on a 4-legged chair, because you don't want them to give the excuse of rolling around, or, you want to see every movement. You're watching, you're not listening. You're not just listening to what they're saying. You're watching what they're doing. And when they're on the 4-legged chair, it doesn't move around with them. It makes it more pronounced when they move around. So when they start shifting in their chair, when you're turning up the heat a little bit, or when they open up, or when they move their entire body language, their body positioning, closing themselves off to you, you got them on the run, so to speak.
Okay. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can will be used against you in court of law. You have the right to talk to a lawyer and have them present with you on your written question. If you cannot afford to hire a lawyer, one will be appointed to represent you before questioning if you wish. You can decide at any time to exercise these rights and not answer any questions or make any statement.
All right, so what they're doing here, John, is they're going through the rights form, the Miranda waiver form, basically. They're reading her each kind of right, each passage, like of you have the right to remain silent. They probably told her, and I didn't pick up on it because of the echo, but they probably told her, hey, initial by every single one of these as we read them as a show of understanding. When you have somebody in custody and you're teaching, or you're giving them their Miranda warnings, it's not just the fact that you're giving them the warnings. They have to have a clear understanding of what the warnings mean, and they have to give a clear waiver of those warnings. So when you say you have the right to remain silent, anything you say can and will be used against you in court of law. You have the right to the presence of an attorney, on and on and on. It's not just that you told them that, because they could be sitting there with their, hands over their ears or whatever. It's that they acknowledge it, they agree with what you're saying, and they waive what you're saying, but you have to show that there was some type of understanding, and the initials are one way of doing that. Anything so far, John?
Yeah, if they're reading her Miranda rights, that means, first of all, it's a custodial situation. As you said, she's not free to leave, and anything she says can be used against her. If you're looking to be in this situation yourself at some point, this is when you say, I understand my rights. I want an attorney. What they show on TV a lot is as soon as the cops go and slap the cuffs on them, they read the Miranda warnings right away. It's all very dramatic, but as we've discussed on the show before, you might go and take somebody into custody and not read the Miranda rights because you're not going to ask them any questions about their involvement in the crime. As long as you're not questioning them, there's no reason to give them those Miranda rights. And if they make a statement against interest, it can still be used against them because you're not questioning them. So here they're going to approach the matters of her involvement in this case. Now they have to, because she's not free to leave, because they are going to question her directly. That's why Miranda is being done at this point. Fifth Amendment, that she's got to waive all of that so that everything she says can be used against her.
Fifth Amendment and Sixth Amendment apply here. Well, the Fourth Amendment does too, because this is a seizure in essence when you're seizing the person. But the Fifth Amendment applies because it's the right to remain silent, or self-incrimination. And then the Sixth Amendment, which is the right to the presence of an attorney, right? So Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth, which if you're a young officer out there, I would encourage you, when you write out your interviews or type out, however you robots are doing them these days, or have the AI explain when somebody waives their Miranda warnings. Don't just say, yeah, they waived and I interviewed them or whatever. That doesn't tell the detective, that doesn't tell the court very much. Say how they waived. Yeah, I'll talk to you, or yes, I understand. Because when they tell you, I don't want to talk to you right now, it's a lot different than I am not going to talk to you, which is even more different than I don't think I should be doing this without my attorney here. I want to speak to an attorney first. Those are like three different things that could happen that are usually encompassed by one general statement that says, yeah, he waived his right, or he didn't waive his right, or whatever. So just understand that there are different implications for depending on what they say. So that form itself is going to become a piece of evidence because it shows that there was waiver and there was understanding of the rights. She sat there and right on video just
And you understand when you start right there, so you turn right there, and then the date and time. Yeah. That's it.
She'll sign and date the form, as will the detectives.
It is 5/7/19.
5/7/19, May 5th, May 7th, 2019.
So background and they probably already have your aspects for that, though. People can see these other stuff. Which
So they just get basic biographical information out of the way, like her addresses, her home addresses, her work addresses. Where does your boyfriend live? Where do you stay? They want to know where she works. They're going to need to know where to find her in the event that she bonds out or something. They want to make sure that they thoroughly identify her. I kind of sped it up.
So you're not working, okay? How long ago what I was talking on that? I got off from work.
I don't know exactly what the detective said. I know that generally, and just judging by Hannah's answer, it's usually just a very general and open-ended question like, so what happened today? Why are we here together today? What brings you here? Or something to that effect. What brings you here would be a dumb question for Hannah, but I mean, like, just something very general and open-ended, because if you start asking close-ended questions immediately, you're going to get close-ended answers. Your goal is to get the person to talk and to loosen up, and eventually, and the goal in any interrogation, regardless of what you've heard on in the movies or through social justice warriors or whatever, the goal of any interrogation is just to get to the truth. So if it's a false confession, you don't want that either. That's bad. You don't want a false confession. You want the truth of what happened, and that's why you're asking the questions you're asking.
And I was coming down Colorado, turning left onto 4th Parkway. There was a semi that was in the lane to the right of me, and he was a little bit further in the intersection than I was. So that's kind of like the 3 and out of nowhere, this guy came down through the intersection, and
I made a note here that the video and audio are slightly out of sync for the entirety of the video that we have. The hand gestures might not completely match, and that's important because you want to make sure that they're in congruence. You want to make sure that when you're reading somebody's body language and you're in front of them or they're in front of you, that their hand gestures match what they're saying. If they're talking in a slow tone, but their hands are moving in an excited manner, or vice versa, it's a red flag. They could be being deceptive, but we're a little out of sync here.
Who knew that defunding the police would have such an impact on their audio-visual equipment?
Yeah, I think, well, the issue was like, I searched high and low for this interrogation. The actual interrogation room interrogation doesn't exist that I can find. It's probably in evidence somewhere still. So we're using a video presentation of a video presentation that I put into a video presentation. So just imagine how degraded the quality is.
luckily I stopped barely in time, but he ran into the semi.
Then y'all are on Park Howell and you're trying to cut out the Forest Park, right? And
He came straight through.
the police got there first, like from 85 Riverdale or from Riverdale Road?
From 85.
Okay, I got you. Okay, great.
And
So that detective is asking clarifying questions, and she doesn't seem concerned about those. She doesn't seem nervous at all. She doesn't seem hesitant to answer any of the clarifying questions. We're going good. We're doing good here. Well, they have a decent rapport so far.
so after I realized what had happened, I was able to go around him, and I pulled up on the sidewalk and I parked. So I called the police. I got out and I walked over to see if everyone was okay. I was talking to the truck driver and another witness who was also a police officer who saw everything happen. And the guy who was driving.
You'll see the female on the left is shaking her head as Hannah is talking. She just keeps shaking her head in an affirmative motion.
Keep going. Yeah.
That's just, it's called it's a form of encouragement. It's there are minimal encouragers like, and then what happened, and you're doing great, or stuff like that. But this is like a nonverbal encouragement, just like you're doing good, keep going.
In the truck, ended up getting out and was just kind of like looking around, like, well, what happened? And he said, someone hit me. And we're like, no, you just ran a red light. And he was kind of stumbling and walking out in the middle of traffic. And after about 20 minutes had gone by, I went back across the street and I was calling my parents. I kind of had a realization that this is going to take a chance at life that I felt I was scared. I called my parents and I told them what happened. And
She's saying that the guy got out of the truck. He was asking what happened because he kind of didn't know. He said somebody hit me, and she and the semi driver were saying, no, you ran the red light and ran into us. So she's saying she walked across the street to talk to her parents. She called her parents first.
well, I was sitting over there and I called back, and it had been over 20 minutes.
She said that she called 911, then she called back because it had been 20 minutes. That's consistent with what we played on the last show, isn't it, John?
Yeah, it was 20 minutes or so. The other 911 caller said that it had been about 20 minutes, and she actually said the exact same amount. So
The fact that he was in his truck and he was revving the engine, and it looked like he was going to pull away, and at that time he took off. Okay. So I got to my Jeep and I followed him, and I told the dispatch that I was following him, and she told me that she didn't advise it, and I said that I'm just getting the tag number. I got the tag number.
So I think that this is significant because this is what she said on the call. This is what she's saying in the interrogation. And she's saying, I got in my truck, he was revving his engine. I told them that he was getting ready to leave. I got in my Jeep. I started following him. They advised me against it. and I told him I was just going to get the tag number. I was just following him, something to that effect. So what it comes down to is the semantics of this. When the dispatcher told her, we actually don't want you to chase, her response is, there were two responses, by the way, but her first response is, no, I'm not chasing him. I'm just going to get his tag. So she's disassociating the word following, getting in her car, moving, in motion behind this other car that's in motion. And the dispatcher's assuming she understands that's what a chase is, or she understands that that's, like what any normal person would call a chase. She's just saying, no, I'm not chasing him. I'm just following him. I'm trying to get up to his tag. And then at some point in the 911 call, if you remember, didn't she, John, at one point say, I'm not going to not follow him?
Yeah. Whether it's simply following or it's a chase or pursuit, really is a matter of aggression. It's a matter of mindset. It's a matter of how far they're willing to break the law to maintain that contact, if they're willing to speed, or really also if they're following directions. I've had a call recently where my reporting party was following a dangerous subject, and it appeared that the person they were following slammed on the brakes. And I said, well, I had already told them to not follow, but it's like, if this person is stopping on the brakes so that you catch up with them, like, you stop where you are, because they may be trying to engage you. So make sure you don't do that. But the 911 dispatcher told them multiple times not to do that. And Hannah Payne said, well, he's intoxicated. The police officer you sent is behind us. And I'm not going to chase him. Meaning at some point she changed over from merely trying to gather information to this. We discussed this becoming a road rage incident. She was incensed that this driver might be on the verge of getting away with it, and she wasn't going to allow that. And I did discuss how a common citizen really has no safe or reasonable way to stop someone from drunk driving while they're moving. True.
Right.
By the time we got to the end of right when I got to River Road, and we came around that curve, and I had an opportunity to get in front of him. Okay. I got in front of him, and I stopped in front of him. I got out, and I was on the phone. I told him, "But you need to stop. You need to pull over." And he's like, "Who are you? And who are you?"
So she said that she got to the point in the story where she just cut off in front of him. She got out of her car and then immediately went into the conversation with him, like, you need to stop, because she's on hold with the police. And he was saying, who are you? Who are you?
Damn good question.
She may not, well, yes. However, he knows he did something wrong, but he also, she may not realize, well, I've lost my train of thought, John, but it is a good question. I mean, like, who are you? Who are you?
Well, I mean, if he's, first of all, we haven't established that he's intoxicated. Like, we all think that's kind of what it is. He could have been in a diabetic problem. He could have been having some sort of a mental issue. And also, yeah, so he was just in a collision, whether he's aware of it or not. He's the party that caused it, but he's leaving the scene. Well, now he's apart from that scene, and he doesn't necessarily know who this person is that's following. And we have to remember there could be some diminished capacity on his part.
Yeah,
but
right.
also, who are you? I really meant that in a more rhetorical sense. Like, who are you to be trying to stop me? She's saying, you need to pull over or whatever. Like, well, who are you to do that? If he is put together but more belligerent, that would also be something he would say. True.
She, I guess my point is that she's leaving. She's very detailed in this part of the story, then very detailed in this part of the story, but there's like a little, maybe a paragraph that she's leaving out. Now, I don't know if she's doing it intentionally or if she realizes that she's doing it, but that's generally an indicator. Like, if just imagine, since we have podcast listeners, if she were to write it out, you would see that the beginning is very detailed. The middle is only one sentence, and then the ending is very detailed. So you're kind of like, well, why would you skip ahead there? Is there something there? And it's a matter of clarifying it. Maybe there isn't, maybe there is, who knows?
I'm like, I'm just no one, but I'm on the phone with the police, and that's when I was like, right there.
So her answer is kind of important. She said, I'm no one. I'm on the phone with the police, though.
And who are you? Who are you? I got something for you. I'm like, okay, I said, I'm just telling you, you need to stop, and you need to pull over. And that's when I had this my phone in my hand, and I told him, I was like, you need to stop, and I'm right there by the door at this point. He reaches out and kind of like hit my phone out and grabbed my wrist. Okay. He grabbed my wrist. We kind of started going back and forth, fighting. And that's when he punched the gas and he ran into my tire. And he tells me the whole time, you know, oh, well, I don't know who you are, blah, blah, blah. And he ran back when he told me, I got something to do reaching. Now, I don't know if he's reaching.
She's talking about him reaching behind his driver's seat. I just want to point out that mainly one of the detectives is doing all the talking. That's the female on the left. The other one is just taking notes. He's going to get his shot in a minute. And he actually does a phenomenal job, you know, in his, but it's all kind of repetitive. But so it's probably best to have one person build the rapport, have the conversation while the other one just sits there and takes notes. You can even be out of sight. So it's just like, it looks like a one-on-one kind of situation, but, or hold it, you know, you can hold up your notepad, like, hey, ask this questions or something. If you're sitting away from the person that's being questioned.
I wasn't watching him. I was trying to pull away from him. And I had gotten him off of me when he had my shirt, and that's when he ripped my shirt. He just pulled it. I have it underneath. Okay. To the minute I was with it.
Okay. You know, I just want to do that and have to go out with him.
He's pulling at it, and that's when I told him, after he's reaching, I told him, I said, I have a gun. I said, I will shoot you.
So he was reaching, and I told him, I have a gun and I will shoot you.
And that's when I reached for it.
So check this out, John. She has a palms up posture here. And palms up generally means a couple things. Generally means one thing, really. It's just like, look, my hands are clean in this thing. My hands, like, I've got nothing to hide. It's a form of, I don't want to say surrender, but it's almost a form of endearment too, like you're trying to win somebody over.
Yeah.
So that's where she's at when she starts talking about the gun. She never really says, she talks about telling the guy she has a gun, but just take note of how she refers to the gun.
I have my shirt, and that's when he ripped my shirt. He just pulled it. I have it underneath. Okay. To the minute I was with it.
Okay. You know, I just want to do that and have to go out with him.
He's pulling at it, and that's when I told him, after he's reaching, I told him, I said, I have a gun. I said, I will shoot you. And that's when I reached for it. And because I had reached for it and touched for it the entire time, I reached for it, I pulled it out. And that's when he pulled, when I pulled away from him, is when, because my shirt ripped. It's not that he let go. I had it out at that point. He was still coming at me, still yelling at me, I got something for you, you know, you're gonna shoot me, do it. And he went forward on the door, and I pushed it forward with my knee, went back forward, pushed it forward, thinking he was trying to get out. When I told him,
did the door open or did it not open?
He was pushing at it. Like he reached down, he went like this.
Okay.
So from the angles that I was at, I honestly don't know if they're opened or not, but I could hear him grabbing the door handle. I could hear it, you know, like just pulling at it. And so that's when I pushed the door forward, and he grabbed my hand, and we were going back and forth. I didn't have my hand on the trigger, but we were going back and forth, and he was holding it, and he was twisting it, and then that's when I actually got my grip on it. And he was turning it, and it got faced almost all the way around when I pulled it back, and he lunged again, like with one hand on me, and he lunged and he swung, and he grabbed, like right here on the back of my shirt. So when he grabbed is when I don't know. I don't remember telling myself.
So when she uses modifiers, or when anybody is using modifiers in a word, in a conversation, like when she says honestly, I mean, we all do it. But when she says like honestly, or honestly, I don't remember, or I swear to God. When taken in totality with all of the other gestures she's doing at the time, she could be giving an indication of deception. She's trying to sell you a little bit more than just telling you what she's saying. So when she's like, honestly, I don't remember if, but she might also that might just be a filler word for her in this moment. It just seems like in the totality of her movements, she's being sincere when she says it, but who knows? But essentially what's happening is they're wrestling over the gun. She admits that she's got her finger on the trigger. And then at some point, and she's trying to like move it away, pull it away, point it away, I guess would be the better word for it. And at some point he grabs her by the back of the shirt.
Pull the trigger. It just, so you have your finger on the trigger? Yeah. So when you're holding the gun, yeah, so I had it, how it's like this, I had it like, originally I was holding it like this. Okay. I didn't have it inside, but he's reaching and turning and twisting, and as he's turning it, he's, pulling and we're going back and forth. So of course, I bought it for protection. Mm-hmm. Not that
she's saying I got the gun for protection. Like though she introduced this, she was being attacked, so to speak. And this guy is saying, I got something for you. I mean, she put herself in this position, absolutely. But she's now at this point where she's being attacked.
I don't have any intention on ever trying to use it.
She said that I bought it for my protection, but I never had any intention of using it.
But I was prepared, I was trying to get prepared for whatever I needed to be prepared for, thinking I'd be able to pull away and then to go, get away from him, and that's not how it happened. So he was pulling at me, and that's when my finger, I put it on the trigger, and he's pulling and pulling. And before this day, have you ever seen that man before in the last that you know of? No, I haven't.
I think she said something. I think the detective asked her something to the effect that before this day, had you ever shot someone or something like that?
I know it's probably not really talk about that. When that lower down line, you told us what happened, but I don't know, seeing something. Yeah, okay. You're right from now. That's kind of comfortable.
Yeah, I edited this for time and continuity purposes.
Yeah, right there. Okay. And he was right here, and I had come around, and I was right here. Okay. And when I stopped, I got out and I walked around. Okay. Telling dispatch, on the phone, I was on the phone with her, and I told her, I said, I'm here. I said, and he stopped. And I told him, you need to stop. You need to stop. Okay. And he's like, who are you? I said, I'm no one, but I'm on the phone to dispatch. So I'm calling the police, you need to stop. You just caused that accident. And he goes, yeah, okay, I got something for you, and that's when he pulled forward. So he, at this time, it was just words being exchanged. There was no contact at all yet. Right. Okay. So he pulled forward out. But his car went out far forward. All the way forward to my Jeep. So it struck your Jeep? It did. Yeah, okay. You said it struck the wheel. It struck the wheel, or that's like that wheel on the back, like the wheel on the side of the Jeep. The actual. Okay.
Everything she's describing can be recreated with photographs, and she's not being deceptive in any way, shape, or form when she's talking about this part of it. And she could be over dramatizing. She could say like, well, yeah, he mashed on the gas and slammed into my Jeep and all this other stuff. But she doesn't say that. She's saying, no, he rolled forward and he hit the tire. And she's asking him, so did he hit your Jeep? No, he hit the side of the tire. She's not embellishing anything. In my opinion, she's coming across very honest, and she's giving the story.
And that's when I was telling him, like, you need to stop. And that's when he was reaching. Okay. He hit my hand. I don't know if he did it intentionally trying to throw my car. So you're saying, so these are two cars, this is the car, and he's inside the car here. You're saying, right at his passenger. Right here is where my car was right here. Yours was like an angle in front of him. Okay. So your angle in and he's here. Yeah. Okay. So you're saying that's when he went forward and he hit it, and I told him, whoa, I said, so you need to stop. I'm like, the police are right here, so you just need to stop. Okay, I got something for you, and I'm telling him, and of course I'm telling him, from a distance that I'm telling you to stop.
So at that point, you're saying stop. No gun hand, no nothing.
No, nothing, yeah.
Stop. Okay.
And that's when, because I had my phone in my hand, with
Okay.
dispatch. And so that's when, of course, I'm closer to the car now, partially because he's going forward and partially because I went forward.
Okay.
And he's telling me, he's like, yeah, okay, you know, I got something for you, which is when he hit it. When I got closer, I was telling him, you need to stop. I'm telling the lady on the phone, of course, I can't hear her because I have her on speaker and all this is going on around me. And that's when me and him, he swung at my hand and he grabbed me by my wrist and he pulled me in.
Does that time someone been out? Has
No.
the phone in hand?
Right. He swung it.
He's hit me how he hit you. You're holding the phone like this?
That's how it was, I had it in my right hand.
Okay.
Yeah, and he's right here.
Okay. Go ahead. Don't get me good.
Right. Well, with this hand, I'm trying to do these
Okay.
and he's just like, he went like this. And then he grabbed me and
He grabbed which hand?
my right hand. I'm sorry, my left hand.
The phone not on.
Not stopping, right. Well, what he did, which honestly, I don't know what hand, how he lunged it first, but when he lunged, it hit my phone. So it knocked it out of my hand, and he grabbed
Knocked
me
it off the ground.
yeah,
Okay.
and it shatters the screen.
Okay.
So that's something else that's verifiable too. She's saying that she had her phone in her hand. That's how she was communicating with 911. She said that she had the phone on speaker and that she couldn't really hear what was happening on the phone because there was so much going on around her. But this guy swatted the phone out of her hand and it smashed on the ground and the screen cracked because of that.
And then he grabbed me, he twisted,
Okay.
and that's when me and him were going back and forth.
Okay.
But it was more me in the vehicle than it was him out because he's pulling at me, tugging.
Okay.
So he's pulling, we're going back and forth, he's attempting, he's swinging, I'm trying to hit, but I'm also trying to pull away because the only thing that I know for protecting me and this man is what I have on me.
Mm-hmm.
Now, by this point,
So she said the only thing that's going to protect me now, she's talking about how she's being pulled into the vehicle. She's trying to hit him, but she can't hit him because of the way that she's being pulled, or there's not enough clearance. And she says, the only way I know how to protect me is what I have on me, which is a polite way of saying the only way I know how to protect me is the gun on my hip.
Yeah.
But she doesn't say the gun on my hip. She says what I have on me. Now, she's talked about the gun in this interrogation, but in this instance, this is where she's starting to get into to murky waters, and she knows it. And she distances herself by saying, the only way I know how to protect myself is what I have on me, instead of like just flat out, this is her, like probably her autonomic nervous system talking for her. This is her on autopilot. And this is her not wanting to say, the only way I know how to protect myself is this gun I got on my hip.
She's been not wanting to get to this point for a long time. She knows it's inevitable. I think she even feels like, like you mentioned with her palms up gesturing, I think if she explains everything that was informing her before she reached for this decision, she's going to be justified. I think in her mind, she's justified. I think she knows that there's a big to-do over the fact that she shot someone. But I feel like if you could just relate everything that I have to say, if she can get her story out, these detectives are bound to see it her way. Drew.
I'm telling them, that's what I'm telling them, I have a gun. I said, and I will shoot you. And I'm pulling. This hand was free. I'm trying to just get away to get my phone.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't. So then, that's when he's saying, yeah, okay, I got something for you. I got something for you. Something about, I don't even know who the heck you are. You're nobody or whatever. And that's when I closed it out because he's leaning, saying, I got something for you. This is it. He still has my hand.
Okay.
He's saying, I got something for you.
And you're leaning back away from the car?
Yeah, I'm being pulled in, but I'm trying to pull away, and I'm trying to pull it out.
Okay.
And I told him, I said, I told him, I said, you need to stop. That I had guns and I was shooting. He's like, yeah, shoot me. And that's when he lunged. He let me go, but he lunged pushes the door open.
Okay.
Which is when I thought he was pushing the door open. He leans forward and he's reaching again. That's when he grabbed my shirt and ripped it.
Okay.
So then when he ripped it, I already had it forward. Reaching out and it ripped. And I'm thinking here is when I'm trying to say I'm going to get away with the door thing.
Mm-hmm.
He grabbed my hand with the gun.
Okay.
We're wrestling with it inside. And that's when he's turning it. And I managed to get it back towards him. And that's when it went off.
Okay. So, you pull out the gun, you're right in the left.
I'm right.
So you got his heel on your right side.
I'm
Okay. So, you pull out the gun and what happened? So, he still got a hold of you?
She maintains that she had her finger on the trigger. She feels that she was right to pull it out. The only hurdle that anyone needs to get over, and she's maintaining steadfast, so it may be true, it may not be true, who knows? The jury didn't believe her, but is that she held her finger on the trigger, but she never pulled it. The guy pulled the gun, and that is what caused the trigger to go off.
He got a hold of my hand when I pulled it out.
Okay.
So then that's when he lunged, he wouldn't lunge, but he grabbed the door.
Okay.
So he grabbed the door.
Is he still holding you or is he let go down?
He still holding me in the beginning.
Okay.
At the very beginning, which is when he grabbed the door.
Okay.
He goes and pushed the door open, and when I got away, but he had my shirt.
Okay.
And that's when my shirt was ripped.
What kind of shirt do you on?
It's a
What's the shirt? Okay.
but it has like a gold type thing in the middle that he was able to grab onto.
Okay.
Which,
I know the part. Take your time. Any space.
I never thought I would.
So she stops during she's having a tough time with this. Like, this is the tough part of her description. She's saying that she had a shirt that had like a center hole cut out of it. That's what he was able to grab. There's an actual photo of her somewhere. We'll have to dig it up, John, that shows that her shirt was ripped all down the front. Like, she wasn't wearing that sweatshirt that she's wearing. Or that hoodie, but her shirt was ripped all down the front. You could see kind of scratches on her chest, and she's just kind of like having a moment here. She's like, this is when he ripped my shirt, and this is right when the gun went off, and she had to kind of pause. And the detective, rightfully so, said, "I know it's hard. Just take your time, and tell us what you know. Just take a deep breath."
Somebody ever done it? Okay.
And, okay.
So
I had it in my hand at this point.
okay. Are you pointing it or are you, where is the point you're pointing it?
It's up. This is the window. And I pulled it out like this, trying to get him away from this, trying to get off.
In her demonstration, it appears as if her finger's on the trigger. So she's
Still have
really,
my shirt.
she's not misleading anybody. You know what I mean? She's showing you her hand, how she had it on the gun, and she's even showing that her finger was on the trigger.
When he pulled away from the shirt, is when the door happened.
Okay.
I pushed the door with my knee, and
Do you think the door opened at all?
I went forward when I pushed it.
So I don't know what open. Time to open, but okay.
I mean, and that's where all the work is not when I'm doing my feet because they got tied in the car.
Did the photographer take pictures of you? No.
So I said it on
Okay, we're going to just hide it with them.
Okay, so he was, but he still had me when I pulled it out, and I'm telling him, because just shoot me, and I got some this video, and then I was up, I pulled it up, and that's when he had hold of my shirt ripped, he grabbed the gun.
Okay, hold the gun, grab the gun, you're in. Grab the gun.
So she kind of hurts like this, and I tried to push us against the door. After my shirt was ripped, he went like this.
Okay.
He was pulling at it, but my hands were just on
Okay,
the side, and
okay.
he's pulling at it, and he's pulling at the trigger, in the trigger His hand is in the trigger.
The hand is the trigger guard, yeah.
Okay.
And then, I mean, the specific reason why I bought the one that I bought was because it had the double
Catch.
safety mechanism, so I wasn't too worried, I guess, because I didn't have my hand all the way on the
Okay.
back, I could tell.
Okay.
So he's pulling at it, and that's when he's going like this, and he's turning it and turning it.
Turn away from himself.
Yeah, and he's trying to, and that's when he grabs it. My fingers and his fingers were both in it, and he's trying to pull it. And that's when I pulled I'm trying to pull my hand out, but I'm not trying to leave the gun there, obviously.
Right.
So he was pulling it and turning it, and that's when I was able to kind of just like yank it back towards him, and he had it like this, and he's like, yeah, just shoot me, just shoot me. And that's when he lunged. He still had a hold of my hand right here.
With the gun.
With my hand, and he lunged, and that's when.
Okay. Do you think that he pulled the trigger, or do you think that you pulled the trigger?
What I told them originally was that I felt like he did.
You think
And I
he
did
did?
not have my finger. I know about the double safety mechanism, so that's why I specifically did not have my finger on the trigger.
Okay.
Now, when I pulled it back around, after he was, tugging at me and he lunged, he still had his hand on it, and I had my hand in on it.
I think that is something known as a Freudian slip. She says that when she's asked the question, did he pull the trigger or did you pull the trigger? Her response was not, he pulled the trigger or I pulled the trigger. It was, what I told them originally is that I think he pulled the trigger.
Yeah. As
And
though
the reason
she has something else to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, the reason she's probably saying that is what I told them originally is not what I believe at the moment, because I just replayed it in my mind, and now I realize it was probably me that pulled the trigger, and it's probably too hard to tell you that. I don't think that there would be a difference in penalty or charge if she said that she pulled the trigger, or if it went off in his hand or whatever. But I think that is likely what happened, is that she pulled the trigger and she remembered it that way as she was sitting there. That's my guess.
Okay.
But it was more so of a matter of force instead of me saying, okay, I'm going to pull the trigger.
And you're talking about the double safety, I'm not familiar with what kind of thing you got.
And SD.
I know this, okay. When you're talking about it, it's like a double trigger, it's like trigger and then.
All right, they're going to get into trigger talk here. Springfield has a safety mechanism from what I understand, I guess we'll have to pull pictures, but Springfield has a safety mechanism on the handle grip. So it's not just a finger guard. You've got to have your hand depressed against the trigger. Depressed against the handle grip for it to, engage the safety, for it to work. That way it probably won't, go off when you drop the gun or whatever, but it's not going to, like I'll demonstrate with this mug here. It's probably got like a little trigger right here, or not trigger, but like a little handle or something right here. So, or it would actually be on the back of it. So you gotta have it depressed. You got to give
an action or mechanism that shows that engages the firearm. Without that being pressed down, the firing pin's not going to drop, essentially.
Yeah. And it's a double. So there are two safety mechanisms. One's probably built into the trigger too. There's probably like a little secondary trigger thing.
The trigger and you have to pull both back in order to. Okay.
And then also on the back of the handle, there's also like a
Switch, like the switch.
When you grab it, right?
it's like a almost like a I don't know
Oh, then you're not pressing that.
So one detective demonstrates on the other detective's gun. She's, he's sitting to her right. So he just kind of puts his hand, you can't really see him doing it, but you can see her looking down at her gun, and he's kind of showing like it's on the back of the handle here.
this part, they're not actually holding it properly, the person to it. Which, when he first had it turned, I heard it click, like the trigger was pulled, and that's before I had it pulled down. before I had my finger pulled down. So because I didn't have my finger on that back part, it didn't do anything.
So her theory is that he actually had pulled the trigger once, but she didn't have her hand on the safety mechanism on the back. But it's just the second time that it all happened.
Right.
So he's pulling and he's fighting, and that's when I put my finger on the trigger, and he still had his hands on my hand, so that way both of our hands was in the
Trigger.
I don't know if the trigger.
The trigger guard?
Trigger, yeah,
Yeah,
you can. And I'm pulling, and that's when it went off.
Okay. Never seen the same before. You practice the same on either side.
I have 3 questions.
Okay.
Good. So how do you understand this morning talking about
So the first detective is done asking questions, and he's like, "Yeah, I've got a couple." The second detective. Notice he's not raising his voice. He's not giving a confrontational tone. He's maintaining the same demeanor that she is, because she's got a rapport with her. He studied just a minute, over the last 30 minutes or whatever, how to talk to her, how to get the most truthful response. He's just asking clarifying questions. He just really wants to know, like, what do you mean? How could your knee be against the door? Those kinds of things. So
Yeah, sure.
I didn't play I'm not going to show his entire interview. He did a phenomenal job at slowing things down, so to speak, to clarify, but it really backed up everything that she said. I really don't think that she tripped herself up.
No, you get her locked into a story, and then there's so many intricate things going on with how the firearm was handled and how this button was depressed and when the finger entered the guard and what he said. She's describing this brief encounter that probably only took a few seconds, but
Right.
If she's lying about how any of it went down, he's going to be able to ask just simple clarifying questions.
Yes.
And the way that she explains it will subtly or even grossly change every time. So I believe that she's telling the truth. She knows she's in trouble, but I think that if she believes if she just tells the truth, that they'll see it her way.
Right.
Okay, I'm not understanding how you can grab off the red at one time. So make that work service to you.
So the first thing that he grabbed was my hand, with his right hand.
Okay, at this point, there's no
His hand. No, it's not out.
Right. All right, first thing, grab his shirt. Where are your shirt?
No, not sure. He grabbed my hand.
Okay, grab your wrist.
Yeah. With his right, he grabbed my left wrist with his right hand.
Okay.
And that's when me and him were fighting. He goes back and forth hitting. And that's when he's telling me, he's like, okay, well, I got something for you. He's twisted and turning and he's leaning back. So then, after that is when I told him that I had.
Yeah, I think it's important to note Hannah's body language here. She's shifted face to face to her questioner. So she's kind of, if you can picture a triangle, she's the top end of the triangle, and she's got two detectives across from her. She was pretty much like heart to heart with the first detective during her questions. Now this guy's asking questions. She has shifted herself in her chair to be face to face and heart to heart with him. Again, I think that this is like autopilot for her. So to me, that is a sign of she's being truthful. She's giving a truthful version of the story. She's got nothing to hide. In other words, she's opened up and she's looking directly at her questioner. She's not, closed off, maintaining eye contact with the other questioner when she's answering the guy's question, which, would be kind of suspicious.
All right, let me go back to where the practice is grabbing. At what point were you inside? Were your arms inside of the vehicle? Or did he have to clean out the side of the window to grab you?
Usually now, because I was right at the window, so it wasn't.
Were your arms right from the window when you was talking to him?
No.
What was your hands doing besides the cell phone? What was his hands doing?
So this is the window, and this is inside the car. I'm telling him you need to stop, because my hand's right here, and I don't.
So the entire interview is on YouTube on Law and Crime. It's called the Hannah Payne interrogation or something to that effect, but it's built in within the trial. It's baked into the trial, and that's the footage that we used. In fact, I believe that detective was on the black male detective was on the stand, and they were playing the interrogation while he was on the stand. And that's the audio and video I pulled to use that. That's, I apologize for the quality. That's the best I could do. That's definitely not Law and Crime's fault either. We're using their video, but it was because they were allowed in the courtroom and they were filming what was on the screen in the courtroom. And that's why you're hearing people coughing and such. So my initial assessment, was I was probably in the camp of John early in this. Like, you could tell by the 911 call, she's taking matters into her own hands. She's being I hate the word Karen, but she's being like a roadside vigilante kind of thing. Then I see her in her interrogation, and I see that she really doesn't have anything to hide. She's not trying to mislead anybody. She may not know the implications of what she's saying, or she may not think that she's in trouble over it. But she's, probably conditioned as a child, or as a young person, or growing up around guns, as we'll see in the next episode, that, you have this gun for protection, and she's in a confrontation at this point. Is this not the time to use the gun? And it's just, it's how she got there is the issue. It's the fact that she inserted herself into that position. But once you're there, I don't know what Georgia law is like. I know Florida is a little bit different in a lot of ways, but does she have a duty to retreat when she's faced with the threat of bodily harm? Now, was she faced with the threat of death or great bodily harm? Because that would be the level that she needs. But that's the crux of her interrogation.
The totality of the circumstances, though, you ask if she has a duty to retreat. It wasn't reasonable to engage to begin with. So whether or not she had a duty to retreat or something, attorneys on both sides are going to really be hashing that out. She had a duty to retreat. I get that the situation changed when she's trying to perform what is essentially a citizen's arrest, or to get someone to halt after leaving the scene of a crime or an alleged crime. But it's hard to make a case that you're acting in self-defense when you're chasing after someone. Now, castle doctrine and all these things that we talk about, that's you being in your home and you protecting yourself and your property. When you're going after someone and then drawing a gun on them, it's very easy to make a judge or a jury believe that she's acting aggressively, she's acting dangerously, she's acting not in a reasonable way.
That's why I say it's important to know when she pulled the gun out. So was she doing that aggressively, or did she get to a point where she felt that she needed to defend herself?
Right. And now we have Hannah Payne engaging that same sort of that psychodynamic of what's the right thing to do, what's the wrong thing to do in this life and death situation that's completely contrived, right? It doesn't have to be that way. And she's put herself into the same kind of situation. And it was for no reason, because she's not a law enforcement officer.
Well, next week will be interesting. We're going to have the courtroom testimony of the dispatch supervisor that was speaking on behalf of dispatchers. She was questioned overall about procedures, and that's another one of my passions, is teaching courtroom testimony and demeanor. I was exposed to a couple felony trials when I was really, really young in my career, and I love the court process. I love the whole thing about it. So
you love the gavels, you love the robes.
Yes, the robes, the white wigs that everyone wears. So watching the dispatcher testify, I've got some great stuff to share. One, she did a phenomenal job, just as a foreshadowing, but also Hannah's testimony is pretty fascinating to listen to. Also, it might give you a new perspective. So hopefully we can crowbar those two things in next week, and
hopefully
give you a little more.
The audio video is a little better too.